The thing that I've learnt most, and I would always recommend to anybody starting out in this business, is total and utter control. And to be able to retain as much control as you humanly can is the greatest power that you have.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, citizens of Earth, or any other planet in the solar system. Tonight on your telescreen, we will see and hear firsthand one of man's most momentous space adventures. A boy will go to the moon.
I got everything you could ever dream of. Probably made $1 million by the time I was 21. You don't ever think it's going to end. I'd love to sell 100 million records. I was always a pushy motherfucker. I grew up in Oxford, and I've always been surrounded by music. My grandfather was a singer on Radio 2. My father played with the Dubliners, which are a very influential Irish folk band. My grandmother was the first woman to be in the Irish Philharmonic. She taught me to play the cello. And I broke her heart by getting into Kung Fu.
The friends that he went to primary school with didn't seem to carry on as the friends that he had in secondary school. He was too sort of unusual. He was very unusual. I think that happens. They got in an educational psychologist to do tests on him. On the imaginative, artistic score, he was actually off the chart because he was so high. Reasoning and logic. He wasn't doing very well on that. I mean, really wasn't doing very well on that. But this complete imbalance. His dad went off. James probably saw it as very abrupt. They
got divorced and it was horrific. It was like a war.
He was absolutely distraught.
I remember seeing this mad other universe. The first record I bought was The Message.
It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under.
Seeing hip-hop, it was like seeing something alien, you know. It was science fiction.
A child is born with no state of mind, blind to the ways of mankind. God is smiling on you, but he's frowning too, because only God knows what you'll go through.
I was bunking off school to go and hang out, to play tapes with my friends. It was trying to find a family identity because your family had broken.
Grandmaster Flash. Why do they call you Flash?
What it is the way that I mix a little faster than the average DJ.
Hip-hop is poetry to the beat of music. We used to isolate the particular section, for example, the drummer's solo. That's been the template, turntable science, what I came up with in the early 70s.
The whole sound system thing was what I was really into, the Wild Bunch. They were my idols. 3D, the graffiti artists, the collaborations, the design. They were just the coolest motherfuckers.
It's the massive attack. You're on the right track.
And the Wild Bunch, which then became Massive Attack. Massive Attack, that was so influential for me, the way that they were as a band. I wanted to be like that. Telling your mum that you wanted to be a DJ was DJ? No.
He asked me if he could have all of his pocket money for a year. Don't ask me why I said okay, but he went to buy these turntables. Then he started having gigs in pubs. He was 14. How did he get to work in pubs at that age? I mean...
At 15, 16, basically just spent most of the time skiving off school to just go to London to get records, you know. All your life was about was buying tunes. That was it.
He'd had enough. He left, finished, and said to me, I'm going to London.
I attempted to study some business studies, but just left college to work in the record stores. I started getting a reputation for selling certain DJs records.
So I'm hearing about this amazing record shop, and then I'm hearing, like, there's a guy in there called James. He's into hip-hop, jazz, he's collecting records, he's into obscure kind of Japanese hip-hop. So I'm going to go to this place, and we'll see who this dude is. As I walk in, there's this kid there with the glasses on, and I'm just like, yo, this is James Lavelia. I was like, this is the kid? Of course it's him. You know, and so, you know, we bonded over music, and we just kind of developed this relationship from buying records.
There was a scene going on, and I got to infiltrate that, trying to get in there somehow, trying to make our own mark.
You dig?
Give me a word.
A word. Stray No Chaser was a magazine of world jazz and jive and what was emerging out of the underground. It provided a hub around which a global community evolved. James came in and had a chat, and he was this 17-year-old kid. He was hip-hop styly. He said, you need me. And Swifty, who was sat working next to me, turned around after he'd gone and said, get him in.
And so James came in to say, you need me because you need a column with new music. And you could tell he wasn't, you know, he wasn't a flyby.
We just chucked him in at the deep end, basically, and gave him a column, which was more wax. The column was really good for him, actually, because basically it was a vehicle which was going to go out to a lot of different DJs around the world.
I was getting a little bit of a name for myself as a sort of, you know, musical kind of archaeologist, pulling out the tunes for that new generation. I DJ at a place called Dingles, doing a club, Talking Loud, which included everybody who was into house music and been raving the night before, or who was just into jazz tunes. The great thing about that club, it really brought everybody together. And there was people like James Lavelle coming through with a new spirit. I really wanted to kind of hook up with him and to start something fresh and new. And that's really how the club, That's How It Is, appeared.
That's how it is.
James sharing turntables with Giles, that was quite a big step for him. It was a barometer of how things would change, finding what were the links between different genres of music.
You know, joining the dots, connecting things. You know, everyone used to go, it was a real mad mix of people. That was a test for him, and he came through it really well, and it was an amazing time. You know, all these records were getting their first rinse in that club, anywhere in the world.
I spent a lot of time travelling up and down the motorway and playing the UK and playing other countries, DJing abroad.
He was just relentless. In those days, only very few people had these vast record collections, comprehensive discographies of labels where it's like all of it.
He was obviously a very good hustler, being the first person to hear whatever people are doing, making contacts, building a community with all his heroes.
I suddenly just started realising there was this crew of people that wanted to change things, you know. Maybe the best thing to do was just try and set up my own label.
DJs had their labels. If you were a cool DJ, you had your own record label.
He'd heard this track by Repercussions. He went over to New York on a mission to get a licence for it.
I borrowed £1,000. I went to New York. I gave £1,000 to the manager. I got the DAT.
He came back with the licence and the master tapes. He'd asked me to design the logo.
I got a deal with a distributor.
I'm going to press the record.
My name's James Lavelle, and I run a record label in the UK called Wax Recordings, and that's kind of what I do. That is my stilo. That is my shit. My wax, baby.
At that time, music industry and DJ culture was locked down by the old guard. It was just like a closed door. You know, I always really admired his kind of, I'm going to get this done regardless of how many obstacles are in my way. And he's given me the opportunity to make records. I literally had a conversation, got signed to Wax, made a record, it came out. I never made demos.
The Psychonauts, we were just DJ kids. We'd got signed to Wax. You know, I was this kid that grew up being into Star Wars and started scratching records and collecting hip-hop. You know, I was a dreamer where I came from. Looking at James, like, James was God, you know. James turned everything into gold.
You know, going through your teenage years is hard enough. Trying to run a business must have been really hard for him. I mean, you've got to always remind yourself that he was a teenager.
It was very hypothetical. It was a bit of a mad dream.
It wasn't even like work, it was just like non-stop mucking about. I don't even know what work we did. I remember. James did make it up as he went along because he was really young. You know, none of us had done it before.
If anything went wrong, it was always down to you being young. Now, when you're successful, it's like you're really young. Wow, you've done really well. So it kind of, I think people take it seriously and people don't. You know, I don't know. I don't really have that problem. I think if you're good at what you do, you're good. I was very much on my own. It was just kind of me and Swifty who did all the graphics. I wanted to set up something which was like a fast record label, releasing records, just bang, ching, 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 just like on point, bang, ching, 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 ching.
More racks, more records, more music. Gotta credit James Laveля with being the first person outside of our crew who really believed in us and believed in our sound genuinely, and was able to give us a shot and put our music out. So, you know, shout out to James Laveля.
The thing that was dope about James is that he just had a vision. The Moac sound to me was one of just forward movement. I'll credit him with being one of the truly great A&R men of the 90s.
At the moment, people that are signed to Moax are Blackalicious,
A doobie and a skin, funky break beats and rhyme.
Attica Blues,
Dr. Octagon,
Dr. Octagon, paramedic fetus of the East,
La Funk Mob,
RPM, the Psychonauts, DJ Crush.
音をキーワードに国籍も違うし文化も違うみんな。やっぱその従来あるフォーマットを壊してで見えない枠を取り払って国境を簡単に越えるんだなって実感できたしパスポートなんかいらないじゃんみたいな。
The Moax office. There's so many people coming and going all the time. It was like a meeting ground for all these different types of music and from all over the world.
What's the secret of your success?
If you send me a cheque with a large sum of money to 167 Caledonian Road, London, I'll tell all you. No, the secret of my success is a very strong identity.
I basically was a famous graffiti artist when I was 18. You know, if you ask people, like, you heard of Futura? Like, oh, shit, he's dope. I was recognized. I had no success. I mean, I was broke. And then it turns out James knew a lot about our culture. We just started talking about what we could do together.
James had tracked Futura down and he was working in a photocopy shop in New York. We went out and bought hundreds of aerosols. Futura arrived off the plane and we set him up in a broom cupboard and he just painted in there. It's just like handing us artwork. I mean, it was incredible.
James was delivering this kind of complete thing to his audience. He was really a pioneer.
I was always like, you know, if my label fell apart tomorrow, I'd rather have a load of nice-looking records at home. Also, I brought in people like 3D from Massive Attack.
Everyone was completely mesmerised by their artwork. It was a boutique label before people even knew what a boutique label was.
Rob. James has wasted a lot of my money, basically, over the years, and a lot of my time as well. To be honest, it's been a difficult relationship, but quite, I'm sticking with it for another couple of years at least.
Moax was the label that really spoke to everyone, like techno, drum and bass, hip-hop and acid jazz. Moax was the label that brought them people back together. It was doing what hadn't been done.
This guy is doing something different. All these other people were just trying to follow what's happening in New York. And at some point, we're all going to wake up and realise that we are not from the Bronx. I'm living in South London. I don't have a gold chain. I don't have a firearm. I don't have a Jeep. I don't have cash in my... I'm overdrawn. Like, I don't have any of the trappings that any of these hip-hop records that I'm so obsessed with are talking about. You know, I need something new.
Expect from my wax that we are a inverted commas trip-hop instrumental hip-hop label.
Rock died out and then came pop. Now you're living in the world of trip-hop.
What people call trip-hop. The hip-hop, soul, reggae vibe, the slowing down of the beats, for the head nodders, for the stoners.
It would be very easy for us to just kind of commercialise on the trip-hop thing and just be like, that's our shit. But it doesn't help your artists. So everybody sounds the same. Nobody's going to break out the pack. I'd rather have a label full of individual people.
Why didn't you sign Portishead and Tricky? You did once.
I'd rather not go into it anymore. Just leave it, that question, if it's all right. Because I just kind of feel now that, you know, there are a couple of particularly famous acts around at the moment that one was heavily involved in. You're an independent with, you know, that can give them $1,000. It doesn't work. For me, the only way that I could feel comfortable in what I was doing was to team up with a major and have that financial backing, that the next time an act that I wanted came along, I didn't have to worry about it. I could just be like, there, let's just go.
A&M Records was one of the great independent labels, and the idea was to tap an existing artistic community that was making great music. Mowax was the first on our list. James was thinking really, really big. He really thought like great record moguls. We offered him a great home at A&M Records.
Pioneering trip-hop label Mowax is the brainchild of a young man barely into his 20s called James Lawvell. He's recently signed the label over for a small fortune to A&M.
Are you rich?
Am I rich? Am I rich? Do I look rich? Ask my accountant. I can't say things like that. Taxman's watching MTV all the time. Damn.
A couple of $100,000, which I suppose if you're 21, a lot of money. Looked really good on paper, man. They had a lot of freedom to build an independent label within the structure of a major, which was quite mad at the time.
I guess, like anything, when you start something to rebel against the system, eventually what happens is you become successful, and then the system comes to find you. And then the system says, you're doing really good now, do you want to come and sit there and eat at the table? And you always say yes, because you only rebelled against the system because the system wouldn't allow you in the first place.
So the deal comes with A&M. He hired a guy to manage it all called Steve Finan. Clearly was a different breed, quite ruthless. I quickly sussed out that that was the end for me. The thing that annoyed me was that James didn't really have the bottle to tell me to my face. He got Finan to do his dirty work for him.
Major label, deal with the bullshit, the money, everybody's happy. I get on with doing the music. No problem.
I think Swifty was a bit aggrieved, but at the same time, it can be stressful. You know, it can be stressful working with James because he's always looking for the next thing that people are going to think is cool. That doesn't mean to say that Swifty's not the best thing since sliced bread.
It did kind of piss me off that I lost a friend rather than a client. We were his friends, yeah. Well, we thought we were his friends.
You know, I came into Mowax as James's friend. Now I can't get hold of you. It's not a handshake and a spliff anymore. You know what I mean? Those days are over. Those are the beginnings of the music industry changing. Labels were merging.
James was prepared to put himself on the line without fear. It was remarkable what James achieved at an early age.
It is just about keeping your ears to the ground constantly, you know. Test the barriers of music and create something new.
Hold up, before we get started. Guess who's coming? Guess who's coming?
DJ Shadow. DJ Shadow.
DJ Shadow.
Is Siri correct? I met DJ Shadow, and that revolutionised and changed the sound now. DJ Shadow's like an instrumental, progressive hip-hop thing. This is our shit, and nobody can, you know, this is, suddenly, you find your own thing. And it's so much more important to you. It's so much more special because that's your shit, do you know what I mean?
James, if he wanted something, he would go and get it. He would get on a plane and go and knock on Shadow's door.
DJ Shadow.
James came out to San Francisco.
This is my first like major video footage. It's been christened in Josh's home of beats. Oh, look at that.
You've been buying a lot of records. Parlor of Mystery. Parlor of Mystery.
This is dope, you know. We could like record this shit and you can download it onto fucking internet shit.
We were so similar. Our absolute obsession of collecting records. We'd go to San Francisco every other month and we'd go record shopping.
I just want to shoot this. This is so dope, you know. It's crazy, this place. It's so amazing. This is classic.
I was very close to Shadow. I mean, he was my brother, and I loved him. You know, I loved everything he did, and it was a beautiful time, and it was an innocent time, and anything was possible.
I'm gonna leave my water there.
So you know where it is? The water marks the last spot discovered.
Another day. Another batch of samples. You know.
My way of working, everything's from a record. I'd find something I thought had interesting qualities as a loop. I had to kind of sample each word or phrase and just play with it within the MPC to get it to all line up the way I wanted it. It was time-consuming.
Music's changed. You don't have to have had 10 years practicing a guitar and playing the piano to be able to make a record. Kids can just get on a sampler and do the same thing.
James's mandate to me was just, I want the out there stuff. Everybody else was telling me to dumb it down. As an artist, you need somebody to be like, you know, go with your strengths. I needed that.
FedEx package comes, got the DAT, and I sat down and played the album. And it was just one of those moments where you were like, fuck, this is a masterpiece.
Do you want to listen?
As a piece of art, introducing was incredibly important. And you know you've got something special.
I have just recently cleared up.
The use of sampling in Shadow's work was completely mind-blowing. It was complete headfuck, you know, people were going, what?
That was a record that most people told me was not going to work. That was the turning point for Mo Wax. You suddenly think, well, you know, I'm just going to do what I want to do. If I don't challenge myself and try the next level of things, where does it all go? It just gets a bit boring after a while.
Most bands start from hypothetical dreams.
Put aside the everyday world and come with us into the realm of imagination.
I'm not your father, Luke. I'm an uncle. Uncle, which is my project, and we work with various different people.
I was beginning work on Uncle. Here we are in the studios, and that I need to do just exactly what it is that I do. James's genius was connecting the dots, convincing people that he has a really good idea.
Shadow's doing all the music. James's role is more editorial.
When James first sees the two characters, he was like, wow, that could be the identity for this group I'm trying to do. And the world that my characters took on the persona of them.
I had this concept. I wanted to make a record which was like a film. I was heavily inspired by 2001, Star Wars, and Blade Runner.
Science fiction.
What I was desperately pushing for was to have my heroes.
James, he had kind of epic fantasies about big albums and unbelievable idea of a sonic journey that combined art and music.
We'd hooked up with Richard Ashcroft. Great, let's do some music together.
That song, I think we're both pretty proud of.
Like it was for us. It was definitely a benchmark thing for the record because it set the record up to know that we could achieve possibly what we set out to do.
Suddenly, there's a slightly different league of people that he was working with.
Somewhere in space, this may all be happening right now.
All right, Guns Blazing features Cool as You Rap. His voice, his timing, what he's saying. I always really admired him.
You got the smoking section, first class tickets to resurrection, forever destined to a place where never resting.
They were really struggling with the project because it was so big. And they said, would I do it? I mean, and I was like right at the start of my career. And I said, I'll give it a go.
When the Badly Drawn Boy recording's going on, James is bored. James phones Osman, middle of the night, crying on the phone to him. Osman gives him his credit cards. We never saw him again. Just gone.
Parties every night by then. Every night you were out. There was just that whole sort of party scene that was going on. Musicians and artists and everybody. It was like the explosion of youth culture. And we were right there in the middle of it, you know. You know, it was just really fucking exciting, but fucking messy. I can't remember a lot, to be honest with you.
There was a cocaine epidemic.
You've hung out with a fair few excessive types in your time, James.
Yeah.
Is that the Gallaghers and stuff?
Oh, right, OK, here we go.
Is that right? Tell me if I'm wrong. Have you been down the path of excess?
I've had good times and I've had bad times.
Right.
I don't know, man. It's all rock and roll, isn't it?
You've got everything you've ever wanted. All your heroes basically being the guy that everyone wants to know. Well, you've got chances of hanging out with me or hanging out with Kate Moss. All right, cool, you're going to go and hang out with Kate Moss. His whole spectrum of people that he's hanging out with starts to change. And we weren't part of that.
Leave me alone. Just go away. I'm tired.
Throw a tantrum. I want to get a tantrum on tape.
Josh, it's not funny.
Nobody likes when I film. Why is it?
James did the drugs, the partying. Shadow never drank, never smoked, never partied. Completely polar opposite as characters.
I think everybody felt like they were out on a limb.
We just wait another month for Tom York. You know, I'll get hold of Mike D eventually. I knew that Josh was really going a bit mad about it.
James is like, OK, I want to do a tune with the Beastie Boys. And we're like, yeah, of course you do. Because they're like the biggest hip-hop band in the world. And you, with your obscure self, yeah, of course they are. And he's like, I'm going to call them up. And we're like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm going to call the Beastie Boys up. And he did it. This is a serious dude. That was really inspiring to watch.
Check it out. We got a little story to tell with DJ Shadow and James Lavelle. It starts right now in history, and I am known as the rapper Mike D.
We started working on some demos for Mike D.
Uncle Star. Uncle Star. I'ma break it down. Lavelle be getting down with no delay.
The only way to get Tom York was that he was touring America. He was going to be in San Francisco for 2 days. Book a studio, he'll do it the day before his show.
James Lavelle, a good friend of ours, has a sort of outfit called Uncle. We talked about it for ages, and Shadow is sort of a genius, basically, and one of my heroes. So to get to work with him was a big kick. Did it in San Francisco and did it in George Lucas's place, Skywalking Ranch.
So dope, this place. It's crazy though, isn't it? It's just like you've just invented your own world.
I think I was at a certain level where I really needed to work with someone in a real close way, and it did feel good to work with other people, and that, you know, some of my best work could come from that. In that time, in the mid-90s, this was before you had a lot of those kind of rock electronic collaborations.
There was no formula. Nobody quite knew how to deal with it. There was no roadmap.
Fat bloody fingers are sucking your soul
It was the first time that I felt like, okay, James, I think I see where you're going with this.
Christian suburbanites wash down the toilet, money to burn.
Films in general influence me when I make music. When you lose yourself in things and are taken on a ride, this mad journey, it just leaves so much to the imagination. That's to me what it's all about. It's kind of dreams and going into another world, another space.
MTV banned the video because he looked too real. And it was just like, okay.
This is James all over, right? It's the most award-winning video, but when you're trying to have a hit record, a video that cannot be shown, it's like, no one's going to play it.
Suddenly it was like managers kicking off.
Richard Ashcroft was signed to Virgin. Why would they allow us to put a single out on our label? It was just never going to happen.
So many people involved, and so many managers involved, and so many labels involved, and lawyers involved. There he is, the man with the plan.
Do you want to get a drink or something upstairs?
Sure.
Yeah?
I could tell everybody was dancing around something, but I didn't know what. And basically, I was sat down in Finan's office. James entered the room, and they got down to brass tacks about, you know, so what are the writer splits going to be between you and James? I was standing up for myself, not so tactfully saying, you're not touching my writer credits.
It was all my idea. The people involved in that record and everything about it, I was the one that had brought all this together. The bottom line, it's the ideas. It was a concept record.
I didn't think it was going to be as controversial as it was for James. Showing up at a studio and kind of checking in once in a while and going, how's it all going, is not the same as sitting down and making a beat. Most A&R men don't get writer credit.
That process from beginning to end was like a 2-year process. Quite an amazing feat that we actually got that record done, I think.
An adventure unlike anything on your planet.
Welcome back. Now, even by the standards of the music industry, the advance notices for science fiction have been extraordinary.
Only just out, and the critical buzz over Uncle's science fiction album has been a music executive's dream. If the Uncle release can unite rock and dance fans in enough numbers, it'll make Lavelle millions and open up a huge new market of consumers for Mowax. Last night, at least, they seemed happy.
You are the first human beings to ever travel so far. All people of the solar system congratulate you.
James Lavelle was this force of nature.
Epic and defining the 90s.
Uncle special size.
5-star review.
Big landmark release.
The next big thing.
KLE.
The media coverage was crazy on that record.
Elsewhere in pop world, a new sort of group called Uncle has just released, well, not an album exactly. This is the sort of record that longs to be called a project.
The record was recorded as a 60-minute experience rather than just an individual single-based project.
James Lavelle is the talkative one, and Josh Davis is the guy who appears to have spent way too much time in the studio with him.
Back during the Hello Nasty sort of recording, we used to have this bet who's going to finish the album first. Okay, now we know we can achieve something here, and we've got a benchmark to base everything else. So, you know, to base around what else we need to achieve in the record. They won. The money's in the post, mate.
The men from Uncle.
Featuring Ian Brown and DJ Shadow, it's Uncle.
UNKLE requesting permission to land. Do you copy?
I was in Stone Roses. Stone Roses finished, and James said he was putting together a record. So we took the track called Unreal from the album and put lyrics on it and made it into Be There and released that as a single. Next thing, we were on Top of the Pops.
Top of the Pops? You grew up with these things as a kid, you're like, wow, you know.
There became the issue of, well, what's James going to do? And I said, well, why don't you play a few notes on the Mellotron then? And it was just 3 notes, if I recall, but at least he'd be up there with an instrument and doing that.
The idea was that we were both going to DJ, but Josh wouldn't have it that I DJ'd. And, you know, Shadow's view of me being just an A&R man and not an artist. And I had to then play the Mellotron. That was very degrading for me.
By the hand, you don't want to be there, over the sea and onto land. As I look into your eyes, I'll pay no mind. I found a way to get inside you. I'll give you peace of mind.
It was a top 10 single, and it was one of the most played records that year.
I went against everybody and I won.
Bang, ching, 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 ching.
Science fiction time, it was... he wants to do clothes.
Now, everyone has a collaboration with a brand. In those days, people didn't do it. You didn't even know how to do it. You know, his trainer game was on point.
Next thing, we're making toys.
Did I ever think that Mowax were going to start making toys? No. Was I surprised that that happened? Most definitely not, because that was the culture of the time.
He started when he was very young. There is something teenage about the whole thing. It's kind of made a career out of being a perpetual adolescent.
You've got a problem if the owner of the label wants to be the main artist on the label. The other people go, well, hang on, where's he going to put the money? On your record or on his own record?
My artist versus commerce problem. I'm working on the future of my life.
This conflict between how far does your vision go in relation to the people who actually make your vision a reality.
James really wanted to be like his artists. The more he wanted to kind of be a rock star, the more that alienated a lot of his artists.
I find it kind of strange that the man who's fronting this record is essentially an A&R man and a record label boss and not a musician. And so the actual creative input that he's had on this record is actually getting people to be on it. And that is seen as some kind of giant artistic effort, which strikes me as kind of weird.
James?
Really pathetic that a magazine like The Enemy can sit there the way they'll have Robbie Williams and the Spice Girls on the front cover of these magazines, yet the whole idea of these magazines is that they're there to support new alternative.
No, I don't appreciate it. Just myself. But The Enemy, I was just going to say The Enemy and all Q. No,
It started off as this amazing fanfare of it defines the 90s. And then suddenly it was like, they fucking hated me. And the review of Psyence Fiction was, who the fuck does James Lavelle think he is? And this is the worst collaborative record of all time.
They were hyping this record for years and years and years and years and years before it came out, and all of it, you know, was like a million years in the making. They'd built this album up to be so much. It was putting a lot of pressure on himself.
I think what's tricky for James is the fact that he was super successful as a young guy. There's a lot of jealousy here. I think most of them would prefer to see him fall than see him go up.
Before you got to enjoy the fruits of being young and having some success, everybody had fucking destroyed it.
E.
Osmond pulled the whole company together and he's like, James, I want to play Lonely Soul. Okay.
It was a dark moment because Polygram financially was under a lot of pressure. I heard about A&M and Island being merged. They felt that two art house labels could be one. That's when I thought it was the beginning of the end.
Osmond did this speech about why fucking A&M's getting shut down. Fuck.
That deal ended, and the deal with A&M ended, so A&M got folded into Ireland. The structure that we'd had didn't exist anymore. We'd always had Mowax trademarked in our name, so we had the name, but as far as any catalogue or anything like that, we had nothing. All the people that were signed to Mowax, now they were signed to Ireland. Same with Uncle. Same with Uncle. We didn't really have a label at that point. Starting again was difficult.
The industry was destroying everyone. The whole Polygram merger was the first big bang that knocked the music scene.
It was horrible. Total shitstorm. I can't see how that album came together, and James walked away with no writing credit. He wouldn't earn a penny.
James was naive, but that was one of his assets, I think. Naivety.
All this stuff happening and you're going from a young kid to suddenly you're like a fucking adult. I was 24. The end of everybody being together.
A ticket to nothingness.
So what about Mowax? Do you keep on going with Mowax?
Hopefully. It's not between me and Mowax, it's between Mowax and Polygram. We were bound by contract to a bigger label than Mowax. James was upset about losing all his artists. He made it out in his head that everybody was against him and that all his artists left him. Right after introducing that, went right into Uncle. Uncle.
about taking a break.
Uncle had to tour. I wasn't interested in touring as part of Uncle, so I wasn't involved.
He wiped his hands clean of it, which was just mad, you know, after all this work and everything just fucking disappeared, you know. It was like everybody just wiped their hands clean of it, you know.
James and my relationship had changed. I could feel it. It just was really complicated emotionally.
It was the height of mine and Josh's relationship, and then the end of it, really.
They were going to do an album launch in LA, and James rings the Psychonauts up 2 days, 3 days before, and Josh didn't turn up, and he didn't come back. And he flew us out, and we played the Psyence Fiction album launch party. And I think that was pretty unfair on James.
That split changed the course of that movement because James was like the brain and DJ Shadow was like the heart. Psyence Fiction being the great masterpiece, but also the end point of an era.
Being in a musical relationship when you're young, there's an idea that, you know, that first kind of love, and you have a dream, and it would have been nice to have been able to see that dream to the end. I had this romance which was just like perfect, you know. I'd met the woman of my dreams, Janet, absolutely blindly in love. We were engaged within 3 months.
James? You're so annoying. I really want some. Now's my time. Now's my time.
I think having Lila at the beginning was extremely difficult. In a very profound relationship, you have a kid and you're still so young and you're trying to create a career and be a businessman, to push as far as you can. How do you do all of that?
Every day you're in a nightclub or you're in a studio. It's a total way of life. But there are obviously other things that are really important in life as well, and I think that trying to find that balance is kind of my greatest struggle, really. You get knocked down and you pick yourself up, and at the end, you know, hopefully you walk away and you win in some way.
Steve Finan got him a home at Beggar's Banquet and their flagship label, XL.
When we started working with MoWax, XL could bring a kind of paternalistic independence, if you like, to MoWax in a way that would allow it to be reborn and flourish. It was really down to James to repopulate the A&R with a new generation of artists.
It was business as usual, really. Got a nice new office in Notting Hill, bought his expensive furniture again. He always had his toys and everything round it.
We met about 8 years ago. Over the years, I worked with MoWax. We just hit it off. Uncle Sounds, our DJ outfit, come out of that. Through us living together, and it's fun, you know. And
lived in the same house.
Yeah.
And didn't get into fights at all.
Yeah, loads. It was a good time, and it was fun. James enabled people that he saw had the potential to be creative, who might not have had the opportunity had it not been for his trust.
I loved Rich, you know, he was my best friend. He was such an amazing character. This would be great. Rich could sing. He could become somebody in the band that sort of nobody knows.
It's about giving people freedom to be creative, working with people that have a voice and say something, and it's about giving those people that space to do that.
That is wicked, man. That is amazing. That was 5 Central.
It's not something that happens every day. Jarvis Cocker and Brian Eno turning up.
Doctors, Cocker and Eno. Surgery.
James, I thought he has big, beautiful eyes. And then he took his glasses off and I realized they were that small.
Shall we rock and roll?
He goes, I sent you a song. I want you to take a look at it, see if we can collaborate, And the song went boom, 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 for 3 minutes. And I was like, hey, James, I got news for you. That ain't a goddamn song yet, you know what I mean? But he was like adamant. He was like, yeah, it is. That sort of excitement and possibility. To me, that's the essence of DJ culture. You may not have made this sample, you may not have made those drums or sang that, but when you put them together, they're something new, and there's an artistry to that. Don't get me wrong, most DJs are fucking retarded. But the great DJs are a real fucking thing. The great combiner of things.
Wrote the song in half hour, sung it in one take, and there you have it. James had recently met Anthony Genn, who co-produced the record.
You know, he wants me to be involved in the record. Great. And then we got in the studio and started working, and obviously it was very clear that as brilliant as James is at some things, writing music wouldn't be one of them. I got to do pretty much what I wanted.
So we'll just do a couple of takes of this for like 3 or 4 minutes of go, yeah? Would that be okay with you?
It just sort of all came together. A snowball that starts really small and just keeps going round and picking up more and more and more and more. And by the end, it's out of control. The way that I like working.
No Pain, No Gain with Keith Flint, the fucking fire starter. And he came in the studio with a right laugh. It was wicked.
It doesn't always go that easy.
That boom, boom thing, that's the best bit in the tune. Well, you don't like that bit? That's just some of the things, I do and I don't. I'm finding it really hard. It kind of, I'm worried about just being too cheesy. I don't want it to suddenly sort of be like a Limp Bizkit record, which is what it kind of starts reminding me of when I hear that beginning. It scares me. And I'm worried that I'm the one that's going to get the fucking, you know, the slack and the hit. People are like, oh, you're going to make a really cheesy record. That's what I get worried about. It worries me. Wow.
There was a lot of pain in the creative process. You know, there was a lot of beauty from that, but they were tough records to make.
never land.
I don't think it was a bad record, but as a follow-up to Psyence Fiction, I don't think it cut it.
Psyence Fiction, it wasn't something that I ever wanted to compete against.
DJ Shadow's not on this album. How come?
He's just got his own things, you know, doing his own things.
The Keith Flint song, there was an instant buzz around it, and the record company were super excited about the smell of commercial success.
James didn't want to put it on the record. He said, it's cheesy. This is a record that was costing a lot of money. This is a business. They've got to turn something over. They need something to hang it on. Maybe they could have had a hit.
The record label were very upset as a result of us pulling that song. We did start rehearsing to play the record live, but the record label, they'd lost interest in us, so we were left with no way of playing live. The budget that we were offered wasn't going to do that. So I feel like the record could only go so far in terms of who it connected with.
You know, Island dropped us. I ended up going nearly bankrupt because I went way beyond the advance.
At that point, you're at the beginning of piracy. Vinyl, Mo wax, people weren't really buying wax anymore. The MP3 was killing us all.
James had nailed the kind of record as an artifact. And obviously the artifact doesn't really exist in the digital world.
Everybody had picked up on the Mo wax success. Anything that I tried to sign, everybody else tried to sign. Mo wax was in debt.
James was still spending huge amounts of money. You know, I mean, he signed South. They spent over £250,000 on South. And that's just a band that nobody knows or nobody's heard of.
When I went into Excel, they weren't records which were hitting. The records weren't selling. It was a failure.
Slowly but surely, the decisions were being made without his consent, or even without his knowledge.
James is a very difficult character to manage because he's such an individual. He's all over the place, and which is what makes him great. He wouldn't be unemployable as a creative genius maverick if there was a role within a company for that. But maybe those existences have to be outside the mainstream.
He wanted to be the artist, so label just became dormant and he was on his own.
The death of Mo wax was a very sad, traumatic experience. I just walked away because I couldn't deal with it.
James Lavelle is defined by Mo wax Records and bringing together that magic moment of synergy and zeitgeist, the Psyence Fiction success. What a wonderful thing to have happened. What a terrible burden to wake up the next year and make new work. If you shone so bright at such an early age, I think to try and sustain that, to reinvent that, it's really difficult. It's not that easy. It's almost impossible.
When you suddenly realise you're not going to get paid for something that you've invested a whole chunk of your life in, then you have to reevaluate how you get paid.
In the early 90s, he was more known as playing downbeat stuff. He totally reinvented himself as a house DJ. That's where the money is, but did it in a very cool Lavelle way.
Pure energy.
We spent a hell of a lot of time at Fabric in those days.
I was a resident for 5 years at Fabric every Friday night. It was a very good time, but it was a very long 5-year weekend.
Escapism. This Peter Pan thing where you always want to stay young and have a certain freedom.
Always parties, it was just non-stop. I did used to get quite excited. One time, a bouncer stopped me killing myself.
can't always just be up all the time. When reality kicks in, coming down is always the problem.
I mean, he's lucky he's alive. Really. Drugs, drink, everything.
Dad!
You're trying to be a dad, but you're fucking that up. I mean, I just, you know, I left home, living in hotels.
I cheated on her, and I started burning my soul, really.
She wanted to change, and I didn't.
Broken up with my daughter's mother, and it was a very sad period of my life. Why did this breakup happen? Why did I end up in bed with this person? Why did I do the drugs at this time? Whatever, you know, those are the war stories, you know.
What is the biggest war you fought then?
Myself. Yeah.
And have you won the war?
No.
Still in it?
I doubt it'll end until you die.
James would always get himself into financial trouble because he would always spend everything that he had.
I walked out with a £270,000 bill, tax and other debts.
James and I met at the time when, you know, there was definitely a fracture in his life, use of substances. I mean, I buried 6 of my friends who subscribed to the same philosophy. I don't want to be at James Lavele's funeral.
Hi, Daddy. I'm not wearing these.
I find it very difficult to know when James has been most happy. He adores his daughter.
We are chilling and illin'. Let's run away. Should we run away? No?
Great artists have always been able to go through these challenges and then rise above it. I'd introduced him to Chris Goss.
When I met James, it seemed like that fire had passed. All the trees are burnt down around him, and he was like still standing, just coming out of that vortex of confusion.
Chris Goss is a producer, he's a singer, he's an amazing guitarist. Through him we were able to record at Rancho de la Luna studio in Joshua Tree.
And burn my shadow away.
Good enough for now. Well, Burn My Shadow, it was just fortuitous that I would use the word shadow, and that was in certainly no reference to DJ Shadow whatsoever. But it was a reference to kind of James's past. Yeah, it's dark. If you stay with it, you'll come out the other side. We're done.
Fucking sorted. Welcome. And what did you think of that?
I left my wizard hat here last night. I want it back. I was in a tough time at that time, you know, where my head was at. James, you know, he and I have apexed at dark moments with striking similarity in time. And if you're going to collaborate with someone, the more vulnerable you are, the better it is. I don't know if they have the game Twister in England or not, but he always starts by having like red hand blue, left leg green. Like he starts like, "Hi, are you interested in getting into this game with me?" And you look at him and you go, "Well, that's all fucked up. I could give it a go. I like insurmountable odds." And he can't tell when he's in one.
Hold my hand. I need you now.
Chris Goss. He just made us feel that it was okay to just let it out.
Are your drugs healing?
He became a songwriter and a singer.
The press pointing the finger at James and saying, oh, what do? You're just the A&R man. At least now he could be a voice, and Rich didn't like that.
The highs that they were seeking.
He did his first vocal, and it made the record.
War Stories.
I was surprised when I heard he was the singer, I have to say. James Lavelle, the lead singer of Uncle.
It's not a fucking rock record, man. You know, it's an Uncle record, you know.
And this record actually is much more of a rock record. Has this always been in your mind?
I'd spoken to 3D from Massive Attack about doing the artwork.
Future had done a lot of artwork, obviously, for Uncle, so it was a kind of tough act to follow.
Basically changed our direction to give us a new image.
So what do you think of James setting up a brand new record label?
I think it was naive, to be honest, but... We haven't really set up a record label in the way that with what I did with Mowax, it's a label where we can put out our own records.
So this opportunity came along. I'd set up a label with Rob. Rob put a lot of money in. It was called Surrender All. We were independent. It felt like a new beginning.
But I had acquired a lot of debt. I hadn't been DJing. I didn't really have any income because I wasn't getting a wage. So I borrowed money from Rob, and there was a lot of money flying around.
And Rob spent on War Stories probably close to $500,000. That's a lot of money when everybody's downloading your albums on MP3s for nothing.
Physical sales, they get smaller and smaller at the moment. Most people make money from touring.
People weren't buying records. Well, the only way that you're going to make money out of music is you've got to go live.
Sell out crowds everywhere we went. It's not a bad way to start a life career.
Cheers, big ears. I love you.
Love you. Before I even met James, somebody told me that James Lavelle's a nightmare to work with. You know, he made Richard Fell's hair fall out with alopecia through stress. Look, you kind of just swept me off my feet.
Just for the record, I absolutely fucking love and adore this girl. I feel free and the darkness is gone.
Some things in life need to stay private.
On tour, all hell could potentially break loose. I can't remember much of it.
Rich and James's relationship was already kind of frayed. They were constantly drinking, got wasted and partying. I mean, that takes a toll, you know, a massive toll.
Something which is part of the fun can then become the destructive element.
Just be like that, basically. Right out, you go next on the other lot. Be the court fucking jester of a lot. But when it comes down to it, I've got this shit on my shoulders, man. I'm the one that carries 150 grand debt around. You know, Rich, he walks in the room yesterday. I'm leaving. And I'm just like, I can't deal with this,
you know. James only works with his friends. You know, Rich was his friend. The problem is if you're in business with your friends, you know, it's gonna get tough.
People used Uncle to achieve things that they couldn't normally do in their own situation.
So you felt used, maybe?
Yeah.
And you didn't use them?
Did I use them? No, I just thought it was the best thing for the music.
It was clear that me and James wouldn't make another record, and that was the end. There wouldn't be any more.
It's just another loss of something which is really special. I've lost half of my best friends. Shadow, Rich, my daughter's mother. Is it really worth it, you know, for what, to make music?
I used to imagine that the older you got, the more experience you got, and you would fail less. But that's not the case. Inherent in the creative process is it not working out. That's why it's such a brave thing to do. Who would make music, eh? It's got to be an easy way to make a living.
Why does that fucking do that?
Pablo Clements used to be in Psychonauts. We started working in a studio that we set up.
Me and James are really close for 20 years. So we did really hit it off because every time he'd say something, we knew what we were talking about.
You go through relationships to eventually find the person that hopefully you're going to stay with. Pablo's one of those people you trust, and I think with my fucking history, it's really important to have that around. We're a self-sufficient band in the fact that we have our own label.
We did achieve a lot of what I set out to do. We were doing great collaborations, there was amazing video stuff being done. I borrowed money from Rob, and I didn't realise that the interest on my debt was ridiculous. Everything that I did was to pay back this debt.
Ching, ching, ching.
War Stories had its own debt.
Ching.
Uncle Live was creating a huge debt.
Ching.
You're having to support all of these people. Everybody was getting paid wages. I wasn't.
Ching.
He had art shows. He had a remix department.
I started a clothing company.
James thinks really big. That come at a price, you know.
Suddenly everybody realised that the way to make money was to license records to advertising, films or television. We did 150 tracks in 5 years or something. It descended into a factory. I'm on a complete hamster wheel. All of this creative world that we were trying to create was going, and it was just literally about knocking out tracks. I was really in debt. The only way I make a living was DJing.
James Lavelia!
DJing is a wonderful thing, but it's a very lonely experience.
I'm fucked. Everybody's fucked.
When you live a nocturnal lifestyle, you're tired, you take drugs to keep you awake. I'd like to think that he will stop, he will find his happiness. He says he wants to give up the drugs, and it's like, prove it.
I'm fed up with it. It's great being creative, and it's great, you know, putting records out and all this stuff, but there's a point where if things don't change in a year, I don't know, man. I don't know.
The only way that I could be myself and get back my life was to make another record. I wanted to be an artist. We're going to sell millions and millions and millions and millions, take over the world and be the biggest band in the world.
He still wants to make the biggest album in the world and sell millions of records. He still believes he can do it. I don't.
We've got to start pushing some barriers, man, because otherwise we're just going to be like old singer-songwriter farts, you know?
Everything was not making money, so budgets were cut and time was cut. They wanted the album finished, and we were given 6 months.
Gives us the first now 3.5 weeks, and they have to finish.
For them to finish.
Yeah.
We've been working on loads of demos to send to potential collaborators.
Any collaborative record, you're only really as big as the collaborators you use. That's proven by all of Uncle's records. And no one was coming back, and we were just kind of panicking that we've just written crap music.
How are we going to get the guitars done? How are we going to get the vocals done properly? We need somebody to do that, otherwise we're just not going to make a good enough record. Vocals, songs, it's not what we're good at.
Chris is only over for 3 weeks. It's a big thing for anybody to look at. You should have your songs first and then record, but because of the tight schedules, we haven't had that chance to do that. So it's been a bit weird.
We've seen things I won't believe, we've crossed into oblivion.
How about throwing This Is Where It All Begins in there?
This is where it all begins.
Yeah.
We crossed into oblivion.
Yeah.
So far gone, the edge I'm on. I see it now, oblivion.
What I really need is what track there, or tracks that they're interested in working on. What I did was ring Marcy. I said we can going to turn it into another track, and she was just like, "We haven't got time to turn things into another track." What, James is going to tell us that we're going to need more time? We can't. If we don't have more time, we're not haven't got a company. She went right into one like that with me. I was like, whoa.
I know, it's not fair though. Yeah.
Absolutely. Fuck them. We're going to make it in spite of it. So who cares, right?
I mean, the record will be fucking finished. I don't give a fuck.
I would say just for the ending, it was like...
If we had the collaborations which we thought we would, by this point we would be in a very different situation. It's not anybody's fault.
Yeah.
Musically, we're way behind. We've got like another 10 tracks to do in 2 days or something. Deadlines and stuff. It's a bit of a joke, really.
New approach.
The pressure of everything that's on top of just one band. If you'd done that on a label that was Fiction or whatever, that had more acts, if you did that, you'd probably feel maybe less pressure. It's your label, you're the only band on it.
I spoke to Marcy yesterday. It was like she's worried about something else because if it doesn't work, she's out of the fucking job.
Try it like as you wrote it. Oh, cool.
Each day, in the quiet. I don't understand. Why are you getting so angry with us? Everybody's trying to do the same thing here.
What are you trying to say? I'm just saying.
Why are you running away? Why are you doing it?
Because I'm fucking tired.
So is everybody.
And you know what? I'm just pissed off with it. I'm really
It's what? Just go away for a minute. Go away for a minute.
My mistakes to make it better.
And we're not going to have time to do it. Why am I doing it? We will have a solution. Well then, there isn't a record, that's it. There is nothing more that we can do. Still believe we can do it.
The dream of love has spread her wings and flown forever. Each day, each day.
I'd love to get an update on what the outstanding vocals are that we're still hoping will come in from different places. And I really need to hear about the things that didn't work.
Nothing's moved on any further than what existed previously going into the studio.
Really, it seems like it was a non-event.
When you've got a very specific deadlines, you know, and it wasn't, you know, so it made it a very uncomfortable and depressing situation in the end, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
We could get like 1 or 2 more days when we know when we've like meticulously gone through the tracks.
There's no money for recording left at all.
Well, we're gonna need to.
There is no money left.
Right.
I mean, basically, we're aiming for the end of this month.
Finish the album.
Yeah.
You know, I think everybody's going to try their best.
Well, I didn't even know about that album. You know, I had no idea about that record. No idea.
Most bands start from hypothetical dreams.
I don't know if you're ever going to fulfill what you expect, because you kind of build a big picture in your head of something, and I don't know if you're ever really able to fulfill that.
This has been fucking hell, actually, for this one. Really stressful. I mean, I have a family life and I live in Brighton, so Brighton's definitely nicer, you know.
Pablo's built a studio in Brighton, hence the empty shelves here in London. I mean, I'd love to do Madison Square Gardens. I'd love to do, you know, Wembley Stadium. Who wouldn't? I don't know if that will ever happen. You know, I'd love to sell millions of records. I don't know if that opportunity has gone.
I created this studio in Brighton. Is that a nice way to say it? Rob's pulled the plug of surrender. I shouldn't say that. A little bit worrying.
The label, you know, I'm not going to be doing Surrender next year. What happens with Uncle? We'll see what happens.
The Surrender situation fell apart. So I'm just sitting there, no studio, nobody coming to London, everybody doing it in Brighton. Just sitting there, just having to deal with this for a year. Feeling like the biggest dickhead in the world. And nobody gave a shit.
We tried to make it work, and you know, it was tough. It was really, really, really tough.
Because what I said is, let me go and do my thing, you do your thing. No more Uncle for a while. And then I'd start doing some remixes under my own name. And they put it under Uncle, which was not contractually right. Everybody starts freaking out. I get a call, somebody telling me that I'm going to explain how every record was made so people know that it wasn't you, which is the biggest load of fucking bullshit in the world. You know, I think everybody had thought, you know, Uncle was everybody now, and records started getting made by committee. In most creativity, there's a leader, a great singular point of view. Once you get rid of that vision, things tend to deteriorate.
The things that are really important are ideas. The idea is everything. If you take my ideas or want to silence me, that's everything you're taking. These things are too important to imagine that you can rebuild the bridge.
I kind of rung James and, you know, I probably said a lot of truths, I suppose, to James that he didn't want to hear, and actually in weird ways I, you know, regret a lot of that because, you know, he didn't deserve some of the stuff that I said, but he said a lot of horrible things back, and I probably said a lot of horrible things to him, and yeah, we haven't really spoke since. It's hard to keep loving each other, you know.
It's his vision. I think some people feel uncomfortable with that they're kind of servicing the vision of this other dude. People think, why are we doing this for this guy when we could be doing it for ourselves? And they underestimate what he brings. You know, the fact that some people can't see it has been quite damaging, I think, for him.
I really built this for me and James to make music in. And I wanted him to be a part of this, you know. We were a team, and yeah, I miss him though, you know, because we are friends. I love James, you know, I really do. I've known him for 20 years. I'll never forget, he is the guy that gave the 21-year-old dreamer a chance, you know.
The band had gone, my DJing career had disappeared, I'd lost a label that I loved, I was heavily in debt, I'd lost my confidence, my identity in many ways. Everything I touched just failed, you know.
What changes do you want to make?
Stop that sort of nocturnal, narcotic world that I've lived in most of my life is the thing that's the biggest challenge for me and the thing that I'm trying to change.
How long have you lived that lifestyle for?
20 years.
Do you think you can stop it?
Yes.
Really?
I think that, yeah, I mean, things change, don't they? And there are things that are being lost. There are too many things being lost.
What have you lost?
You. I lost you. got here, it's definitely not in a good place. My relationship's gone down the toilet as usual. I realised that I just kind of constantly throw things away.
And the faster the world spins, shorter the lights will glow.
I just had the last few days to really go into myself in Sri Lanka. To be honest with you, I just got sick of hearing music and the idea of even... I had no idea of what a record should be anymore. I just suppose you just lose the desire and you just don't end up, you know, I just didn't fucking care anymore, really. In the past, relationships, failure, it's just been drowning me and taking me down. I need to find a bit of myself right now and work out what it is that I want to do in my life, and certainly not live this tragic roundabout anymore, really. It's just been a vicious circle.
I don't know, I was always like, you know, if my label fell apart tomorrow, I'd rather have a load of nice-looking records at home. Toys, stickers, trainers, clothes, photos, paintings, sets. DJ Shadow, where I met my daughter's mum. And then I've got my record collection, which sort of spans a lot of here, and here, and here, and here, and here. And here, a lot of great memories. There's a lot of very, you know, it's sad, you know. Sad. Trying to store something like this over 20 years, it's cost me a fortune. Sometimes you think, well, what have I been mad and spent money unwisely?
The sad thing with War Stories and When of the Nightfall is at exactly the point where dance music and electronic music was really starting to take off in a big, big way, and he went the other way. And he missed the boat in a big way. He does put his trust in a lot of people, and sometimes people will take until there's nothing left because they see James as a path to something bigger than where they're at in their lives.
Funny how certain things just constantly reoccur. When Mowax finished, I kind of just put everything into storage and threw away the keys. It's a beautiful collection of dreams, what you can create. What I would like to do is be able to show that whole culture with an exhibition and book.
James and I had met each other and he was telling me about all the projects he had coming up, so the book, the plan to do an exhibition of Mowax. We started talking about whether we might work together. Meltdown is our annual curated festival at the South Bank Centre. We ask an artist to come and basically free rein across the 20-acre site for them to choose their favourite artists from music, dance, theatre. We've worked with all sorts of people in the past 20 years, from Yoko Ono, Morrissey, Patti Smith, John Peel, Lee Scratch Perry, David Bowie, Nick Cave. It became more and more apparent that James was an interesting candidate for the role.
I met with Jane and she was like, why don't you curate Meltdown? Oh my God. Really? Wow. This was the greatest opportunity to bring everything back together. It was the greatest moment you could imagine.
I mean, I was really, I'm really, you know, of course, I'm incredibly flattered and I'm incredibly honoured. South Bank, which is one of the most important cultural landmarks in England, in the world, I'm back in it, you know. Meltdown's given me a deadline, you know, it's giving you a reason, you know.
Does anyone remember who I am?
When we said yes to Meltdown, just compose myself, because how the fuck are we going to ever do this?
Wow, my first file of facts, all the people that I used to work with.
James opened his very big black book of previous collaborators, friends, artists. We all expected everyone would jump at the chance. And in all honesty, not everyone did.
The same, vultures start circling the head and the same resentment starts coming out. Because the Mowax fallout was a painful period of time for a lot of people. I, for one, felt like I'd lost a friend, There are these people that have got all this resentment. They've never actually sat down with James and been like, let's hug it out and move forward. There are too many unsaid conversations.
If every single relationship that you have creatively breaks down, then you might want to, take a look in that mirror, because chances are you don't need to be Sigmund Freud to work out that, it might be you that's the problem.
3D. Massive Attack, we thought was going to be in the bag, but it ended up not being in the bag at the absolute 11th hour. It was a really scary moment because we were really, really close, and there was what felt like a gaping hole in the programme. James was feeling like he'd disappointed people.
So there was a couple of disappointments there in terms of people he probably would have liked to have had on. I think Massive Attack should have been on the bill. They embodied everything that he wanted to do.
James realised what a gargantuan thing he'd taken on.
And how is it getting involved in the whole Meltdown thing? It's a lot of horse trading.
It's everything. I've put my soul on the line for this shit.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and absolutely everything was at stake for James.
James Lawvell, curating the 21st Meltdown.
An honour, really. Very, very proud of that.
Right, we're going to talk about Meltdown.
I'm doing a Mowax exhibition as part of Meltdown.
It's going to be a wonderful 10 days, so enjoy. Thanks very much.
Meltdown is a huge thing, it's a big deal. The greats have curated there.
It's a real honour for James. It's the musical equivalent of being knighted. It's a recognition that you've had an influence on the arts.
When I heard that James had got Meltdown, I was so chuffed. He's not David Bowie, he's not Yoko Ono, but for the 90s generation of music buyers, he is as important.
The culture, the history, the things that one has been involved with, in many ways has been publicly validated.
The fact that James did something called Meltdown, it's already funny. You know what I mean? I knew it meant a lot to him, so it meant a lot to me. Because we're friends. I was in the middle of making the most difficult thing I had made, which is like clockwork. James said, can we just do something?
Josh had been working on his Queens of Stone Age record, so I went to LA and recorded this song, Like Clockwork, with Josh.
In this collaboration, James, in a way, he almost just drew an outside shape and of a coloring book, and you color in.
Like Clockwork became the title track for his album and had gone to #1 in America. So, fuck. #1 in America and then Meltdown.
Meltdown was the most successful Meltdown that's ever happened in terms of ticket sales. How the fuck did we pull this off?
Uncle at one point in time was you and DJ Shadow.
There's lots of people that have come and worked on it over the years. I'm doing my show, the first Uncle show in a while.
For somebody like James Lawvell to still be doing Uncle stuff, committing to it and playing all these songs live as well, it shows that he cares about it and cared about it from the first day.
He sort of stands up as a sort of one-man music industry kind of machine, you know, that's never played all, you know, constantly sort of evolving.
Genius comes in very temperamental vessels, and if he had rough edges, or if he thought himself the center of the universe for a period of time, it makes no difference. All that matters is the work that he created.
All is forgiven.
Oh, look at that.
Okay, should we start at the beginning?
Yeah.
Is it going to be the James I remember, or is it going to be dark and tortured James? He seemed healthier. Seems like he's kind of turned the page. Doesn't matter whether you're behind the mic or what role you're playing. I respect you as an artist. This is for you, and this is, you know, a way for people to be able to, again, mobilize on his behalf and try to achieve something better than the sum of all the parts.
Be still now. I am with you. I am deep within you. You are at peace. You cannot be harmed. You will not suffer. Breathe deeply. Breathe in the healing love of the universe, and breathe out the sickness which has taken you. I am with you.
This wasn't just something that happens anytime. I hadn't done any Uncle material live since we did Top of the Pops. The music is still something that I believe in, and we all want to do our best for James. And then for him to kind of bury the hatchet with all these people from his past, there was a lot of positive energy around it.
They're doing a show together. They're doing two shows together. They're DJing together, which they haven't done for a very, very long time.
James is constantly reaching for the stars, and I think it takes mad dreamers on both sides to come together and make history.
He is an artist in his own right. Where an artist may use a paintbrush, James will use a person. It's brave because a paintbrush can't answer back. If I was a tool in his artistic vision, then it was a lot of fun.
Who is it that says that you need to make music in this way and not that way? The architect has to physically put the bricks on top of each other? Is this what we're saying? That's a nonsense. Imagine all music that was made was written on a guitar. That's a disaster.
He gave me a chance, and he gave lots of people chances. Lots of people who would never have been given chances by anyone else. I love James to bits, and I always will. The friendship is what is important to me.
Friends he's fallen out with, All those kind of things, I think they weigh pretty heavily on you.
You enjoy something more when you struggle to get it. You learn, and you grow, and you learn, and you get your blessings and your lessons, you learn and you grow, and you go from there.
Thank you very much. Who says that dreams can't come true?
You have to believe in what you believe in, and happy are those who dream dreams and are willing to pay the price to see those dreams come true.
I've had a lot of growing up to do. I fucked up. In many ways, it's my fault. It's been very lonely. I've fallen out with people that I really loved.
Time does heal. Some things it doesn't, unfortunately. But I've seen what I want to be, what I don't want to be. It's like looking at yourself in the biggest mirror you've ever seen.
You see things in life and you'd be surprised what you see. Life, your whole life is changes. 1 second, you got it made. Next second, you're down in the dumps. And it goes back and forth throughout your whole life. 1 second, you got the most beautiful girl in the world. Next second, you don't even have a girlfriend no more. And it goes back and forth and back and forth, you know? And this is life, man. It's changes. This is what you gotta go through throughout your whole lifetime.
I feel like there's a lot of stuff I can put behind me.
I see this as the beginning.
The great alien fortune teller has wisdom for you.
Your fortune. Oh, how you love to whistle and sing. Oh, how you love to dance and swing. Your future life with joy will ring, with all happiness it will bring. You have a very sympathetic nature. You do devote a great many hours to the welfare of others. You have a very fine mind, and if you cultivate it properly, you will be very successful. You always walk as though you know exactly where you're going. People will respect you for your determination. You will endure some hardship in the near future, but eventually everything will turn out for the best, and unending happiness will be yours. Play again?
Now it's time for our wrap-up. Let's give it everything we've got. Ready? Begin.
Artificial amateurs aren't it all amazing? Analytically, I assault, animate things. Broken barriers bounded by the bomb beat. Buildings are broken, basically I'm bombarding. Casually create catastrophes, casualties canceling. Cats got their canopies collapsing. Detonate a diamond tank daily doing dope. Demonstrations, Don Dada on the down low. Eating other editors with each and every energetic, epileptic episode. Elevated etiquette. Furious, fat, fabulous, fantastic. Flurries of funk felt feeding the fanatics. Gift got great, global goods gone glorious. Getting godly in this game with the glorious. Hit 'em high, hella hype, historical. Hey, Holocaust hymns, hear 'em holler at your homeboy. Imitators idolize, I intimidate. In an instant, I'll rise in an irate state. Juiced on my jams like Jerry Curls, jocking joints justly. It's just me writing my journals. Kindly, I'm kindling all kinds of King Kong. Karate kick type Brits in my kingdom. Let me live a long life, lyrically. Lessons is learn, lame louses just lose to my leverage. My mind makes marvelous moves, masses. Marvel and movement, he mock what I've mastered. Niggas nap knowing I'm nice naturally. Knack never lack, make noise nationally. Operation opposition off, not optional. Out of sight, out of mind, widening opticals. Perfected poems, powerful punchlines, pummeling petty powder puffs in my primes. Quite quaint close, keep quiet as quantum. Quarrelers ain't got a quarter of what we gotta. Really raw raps, rising up rapidly, riding the rushing radio activity. Super scientifical sound search on. Silencing superfly saps that are soft. Tells 10 times talented, too tough. Take that, challengers, get a tune up. Universal, unique, untouched, unadulterated, the raw, uncut. Verb by smart, victorious, valid. Violate vibes that are vain, make them vanish. While I'm all well, what a wise wordsmith. Just weaving up words, weeded up on my work shift. Xerox, my X radiation glows extra large, X height letters. It's all